and I think something you said, we're not here to replace salespeople or displace them. The reality is today, there are so few industrial salespeople. I mean, every client we have continually is after more salespeople. So it's not a either or. It's a we can't find, and we've got to do something different so that the market can be prepared so whoever's left can close and not prospect.
But when you have a good video that helps complement and says the things that maybe I don't naturally think of, it makes, to me, a good sales guy better. And it fills the holes. If, like I said, if this guy struggles with price, then let's put the price, let's get it out in front of it, and let's have it there. Don't give him the option of cutting it or doing it.
Sure.
And then if this guy struggles with technical acumen, then let's make sure all the technical parts of this. He's great at building relationships and he's great at pushing the product through, but he doesn't cover this part. So let's cover those things. So again, vertically, you have a video of Tim, and then horizontally you have all the technical parts. So Tim says he can use those pieces for when he's out trying to sell, or you can push it in front of it. It's that passive sell.
Yes.
I just send you the email. Hey, Bill, take a look at this.
Yes.
I know I don't have the time to sit here and spend 4.5 minutes with you because I want to do this to 30 people. And then when you look at it and you tend to you receive the content when you're ready to receive it.
Thank you for joining the Missing Half podcast, where we're discovering what's missing in manufacturing and B2B marketing. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest I've been very excited to have on, Tim McLaughlin from Blink.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us, Tim. And we're really excited to talk about all things video today.
Mm-hmm.
You've been in the video space for many, many years.
Yep.
Seen it mature, changed dramatically, and certainly recently we've seen the acceleration of that change. So we're excited to hear your perspectives on video and what you've learned over the years.
Sure. Yeah, it has been quite the change. When we started Blink, we're about 14, 15 years ago, video was kinda-ish just, getting started. And, for those of, anybody listening and watching know that the capital investment to get involved in video is not cheap. And we hadn't just started out and figuring everything out. We doubled down and we said, let's just get in. So we bought a couple cameras, a couple light kits, and we started doing video. And then we started doing more video and doing more video. And then, we're at our core, we're a full service marketing advertising agency. And we were more known for our video. And one of the things that we made a commitment to as a company is, we'll a la carte our services.
Sure.
And, but we approached it always from a marketing and advertising background, because that's at our core who we are. And we found out in chatting with our clients and people that were just prospectively looking for video, that not approaching it just like a pure video production company who there's a ton in Pittsburgh and they do great work. And this is definitely not a knock or a slight on them. But we didn't know how to approach it any differently because my partner and I, Trip, at the time, neither one of us worked in an agency or we worked in video production. We just started and we approached it how we would as marketers. And so I'd like to think that we were visionaries rather than just lucky in our thoughts and plans. But and it's worked and served us well, for all this time.
That's great.
Yeah.
When you guys have certainly been built a reputation in and around the region in Western Pennsylvania, certainly. And I've been a fan for a long time, watched your work, and you guys have done some amazing stuff. And I think one of the things we need to think about when we think about video and so specifically for our audience, we're talking about manufacturing, B2B, and not so much D2C. But One of the things that has become apparent to me is that there is very little difference in delivery anymore. It's all the same. It's just a different audience solving a different pain point. So if I'm watching something on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube and I'm learning about some new dietary thing I want to do or some lifestyle thing, that's my D2C. I'm going to ingest the same type of information if I'm trying to solve a problem for my company.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that has certainly changed over the past 5, 7, 10 years.
Correct. Yep.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, no, 100%, Bill, because I go back and don't want to turn this into a blink show, but
Sure.
our ignorance in the approach early was again to our benefit. I came from the cable side. I came from the B2C side. So, we never had anybody tell us like, hey, that was a really good brand message you got there. It was all about ringing the bell and getting people through the door. But when you kind of softened that approach from a B2C perspective, and you started looking at things like, like explainer videos, product demonstrations, and I'll never forget, we were down, my family and I, we were vacationing down in Deep Creek, and we were going to rent a boat. The guy says, here, watch this. This is 15 years ago, whatever. Watch this video, and that'll talk you through all the safety things. And in my head, I'm thinking, how genius is this? Number one, from a liability standpoint, there's no mess up. If somebody says he did not tell me that I had to do this, it was like, well, at 8 minutes and 42 seconds, they absolutely told you, as opposed to having to pay a person to stand there and go through this repetitive kind of nature. So for me, it was kind of like a little light bulb. I'm unfortunately on vacation, so the rest of the time I'm thinking of all these other places that we could make these videos.
Sure.
And that's where, when people talk about explainer videos, where you're basically taking, a semi-complicated process and explaining to people how this works. You're selling them, whether you're selling people to purchase a product, whether you're selling people on how to use the product, whether you're selling your investors on why they should invest in a product. So there's that part of it. And the product demonstrations. I remember one time reading, it was a massive statistic, 70% of people don't purchase a product because they weren't familiar how to use it. It had nothing to do with the trust of all the other, badges of honor and things that you go trust with a product. It was based on how does it work?
Sure.
So, and then now, obviously, I'm going back, some of these comments are 10, 15 years, what brought us here. Now, that's all you see are product demonstrations. How does it work? Sometimes, maybe not to the best degree. So that's how we see the best usage of it is looking at all the different types of video that you can do. And types of video are the styles of video, like we said, explainer videos, product demonstration, training, instructional videos, virtual tours, brand, our brand team's going to look at me like, Tim, you can't say brand like that, but they're not here. But they're not here, and we're not going to let them watch this.
That's right.
So, that is a big part of building a brand. And so as our agency grew and we got more agency people in there, and the marketing and the strategy and the development of everything, how that process works, it brought it back to us from a video perspective. When you and I were chatting about doing this, and I told you about the horizontal and vertical approach.
Sure.
And for the folks listening, when people call us up and say, hey, I want you to make us a video, in my head, I'm thinking, no, you don't. You want to see, because that is the worst use of their dollars and our resources is to make you a video. And then I was like, we're going to make you 8 videos. And when you explain to them and show them how, that exponentially, it's not an exorbitantly increase in the cost.
Correct.
But when you're using the time, because you all know, anybody that does video, setting it up and breaking it down and rolling those cameras is the biggest pain there is. So when you're set up, let's get as much as we can. So from a marketer perspective, we look at every opportunity and say, what else can we accomplish today that fits within the brand? Because your brand is already set up and your brand guidelines and all the other fun things when it comes to building the continuity of a brand. We push forward, and then we create that content that it can be used, as I always say, vertically, whether it be, one individual, and then when you have 6 or 7 individuals that you're asking the same questions, now you can spread that across, where you can make a video. Here's a Bill Woods video, but then here's a question number 5 video.
Sure.
And then now you have, for doing nothing different other than the setup, you now have 6, 7, 8 videos. Sure, you have to edit them and you do that, but the footage can sit in a can. It can sit in a shelf for 4 or 5 months if it's evergreen. So you're not going to have to edit it and put it out all the time where the cost comes. So,
well, I think that's even more important today because we look at, so let's go 7, 10 years ago. They wanted that one corporate video they could show at the trade show. They could show to the investors that it was, the big broad brush stroked and like a little bit of B-roll, a couple key statements, and that was it.
Yeah.
That is not good enough today.
No.
And not only do you need video to kind of communicate your entire brand promise, you need video to be available for social media and all the different formats and channels and all of those things.
Yeah.
And then on your YouTube channel, then it needs to be in your emails. It needs to be on your website, right?
Absolutely.
It's got to be everywhere.
Right.
So we absolutely believe in that concept. You guys call it vertical and horizontal. We have some other nomenclature for it, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And as you've pursued this, and one of the things we always try and figure out what's missing, right, for our clients, for people in the industry. When we look at that concept and how you've implemented that vertical and horizontal approach in the market, what value, what outcomes have you seen driven for your clients whenever you're able to do that capture experience, right? Where you're getting that vertical and horizontal, and then, okay, now, great, we have video, we have it in the hopper, whenever we're able to take it to market, like what's the outcomes? Because that's, ultimately a marketing manager is going to have to justify this idea to their boss or to that executive or to whoever's signing the paycheck. What are the outcomes you're seeing from that?
So what to me we're delivering and what they're getting is going back and, video, all as powerful as it is one element of your complete marketing strategy.
Yes.
And where a lot of times we see where folks misstep is they have a marketing strategy, they have all these beautiful designs and putting good content out, and then they go and make these videos that, sure, it may have a lower third that matches or whatever, but it doesn't have the volume that they need. And then they also, where, listen, using a company like ours, it's not, and maybe it's not the cheapest thing at all times. So we tell people, well, let's call us and help you build the strategy. These things have changed the way that people, and we tell people, use that as part of your strategy. Have us come do a real nice open, do a nice close. We'll do something else. We can help you with a lower third. But there's nothing wrong with catching some good video. You can add the assets to an iPhone and you can intermingle into that for that regular volume and content. So if you don't have the budget or the resources, so when we to maybe do that on a regular basis, but we tell people your audio's got to be crisp. People will forgive, certain things, but if they can't hear it or if it's too long, we and this is where marketing folks come in and say, well, we're looking for a 5-minute video. And we're like, no, you're not. Like, and unless you're going to lock the doors and hold people captive, you don't want a 5-minute video. We'll say people will watch 5 1-minute videos,
yes,
but they're less likely to watch a 5-minute video. And I remember one time somebody we were chatting about, and they referred to it as the reverse hockey stick effect. And they said if you took a hockey stick and stood it on its end, and then right where the bend comes in, and they're like, what's that bend? And that bend is about 90 seconds. Now it's probably about 60 seconds. What's the first thing you do when somebody sends you a video? You look and say, oh, am I going to invest 3 minutes and 27 seconds of my life? Probably not. Am I going to invest 82 seconds, 51 seconds? Sure, I'll do that.
Sure.
And then I want to watch another one and another one, So, and then giving that to a marketing professional who says, you have all these little nuggets, these assets, because you have to keep, I don't know what your recommendation is for your B2B folks on how often they should be delivering content, because we do get involved in that and we do guide folks.
Sure.
And, a lot of times when we are chatting with, especially our B2B clients, sometimes this is their first venture into anything like this.
Sure.
So to tell them you should be doing something 3 or 4 times a week is preposterous to them.
Sure.
They haven't done anything in 127 years. So we're like, okay,
yes,
let's start with this. Let's get this.
Crawl before we walk.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but when a true marketer gets involved and starts helping some of these folks, and they realize, hey, we can create more content and we can start delivering more content. For their first thing is, I don't have all these ideas. And that's when we say, well, when you get everybody together, you do it vertically, you do it horizontally. Now you go from 1 3-hour session where you're grabbing 1 4-minute video to having maybe 34, 35 videos, because you can piece it. When you strategically think it from a marketing perspective and you look and you're asking these things, it gives the individuality of everybody that you're talking to, but it also gives the uniformity of a brand.
Sure.
And that's kind of the approach, whether we do it or somebody says, hey, just tell us what to do and we'll do it ourselves. Here's what you need to do. So
no, I agree with that. And I think, what does success look like for a B2B or manufacturing company today? I think if they can walk their client through their entire brand promise, brand story, products and services, how to, those type of things online with video. So you go to their YouTube page and there's a number of series with the thumbnails, and they can self-select what they want, when they want, how they want.
Correct.
Right? Whether it's on the phone, whether it's at their desktop, however they want to do it. That to me is what video success looks like, kind of as a table stakes. And if you don't have that, your competitors are developing it or have it, and you are not going to be considered when it comes time for purchase.
Correct.
And then, what, okay, so we're talking about the YouTube channel, but then what does that give you? Then that gives you that maybe 1 or 3 social posts a week you can leverage. And then also to be consistent when you're talking about that topic or referencing that idea on your website or in the email or however it is, it's available. And just like you said about the boat issue, I've been through that training. I am also a licensed captain in Maryland.
Oh, good enough.
Right, because I went through the video.
Yeah.
But one of the things I think that that marketing managers, marketing executives undervalue is the consistency that can be created, not from a liability standpoint like the boat captain video, but from, we want our brand story to be told the same way or similarly with very low variability every time, all the time.
Right.
And I'm not saying we can control what people say, but we can direct and create a brand standard around which video is created vertically and horizontally in those sessions.
Correct.
And then when we put it on YouTube, of course, they proof it, right? They look at it, so they know it was right.
Yeah.
We can have that consistency. And I think when we look at industrial salespeople, they're all aging and retiring, the good ones. And if you can find one, they're very, very expensive because they know they're amazing.
Yep.
So the inconsistency in the sales messaging at the point of sale, the whole way back through to the attraction phase is tremendous.
Yep.
And we can reduce that variability, have a more precise communication against that brand standard with video. And I think that's also part of what success looks like for what we're trying to do with these things.
Yeah, no, I mean, check all the way across the board. And the part that I guess, I don't want to say folks struggle with, but again, the part that we see where maybe there's some disconnect is companies make it hard for people to tell their story. And the more content, like I wanted to, like I'm doing this because there's going to be somebody out there who's going to say, hey, that guy, he seemed like he was all right, kind of knew what he was doing.
Yes.
Tell your story.
Yes.
So you put your story out there and then you don't have to worry. We've all been around and part of organizations where there's sales guys. There's some guy, he's Joe Technical, and he goes down a list and he puts people to sleep because he's going over the technical acumen of your product. That's nice, but that's not what's selling it. And you get the other guy who's all ready to drop his drawers and give you a lower price because that's what he does. But when you have a very delineated process and structure of how this video tells about your product, you can say, hey, here are the technical parts of it. And like I said, if question number 5 is technical and you have 7 people talking about it, for the guy that's a techno junkie, he's going to want to watch that 3-minute video about the technical aspects of that. But that's not your whole video. So you pull that aside, And then the guy that says, I just need an overview. And I'm just looking at it and I'm seeing it. Then when he goes to his boss and says, listen, you got to give this Bill Woods guy a call. Who is he? I'm going to send you a video about him. I'm going to send you a link to it. You're making it easy for your supporters. I always say you need an evangelist, somebody evangelizing out there for you, but you're not giving them anything to evangelize. So, and that's where video, nothing's more powerful. There's an emotional connection to it.
Yes.
People don't say, "Oh, I read that ad or that billboard brought a tear to my eye." That doesn't happen. People talk about videos. They talk about tear jerkers.
Yes.
They talk about that stuff. There's an emotional attachment to video, and it can be emotionally attaching to your product in a sales subjective kind of way.
Sure.
Right.
One of the tensions I think we run into with video is, and I think this is a misconception or what might be missing in people's strategy, is that it has to be overproduced. So you do some work for some D2C brands, some big brands.
Correct.
And that is Hollywood level production.
Correct.
And I mean, we don't do any of that. So I just have a total reverence and awe for that work, but amazing high value production. Mm-hmm. And that's an area, that's one thing. Yeah. When we come into the B2B space and the manufacturing marketing space, it feels to me like we can be more aggressive on the candid and authentic end, having these type of conversations.
Correct.
As opposed to, oh, Bill's not very good looking, let's get a paid actor to come in and say exactly what he would say, right, because they know how to deliver a line. I don't know how to deliver a line. Right. Like I hold this conversation and we've now seen the extent of my capabilities. Right. So what are you seeing as far as the ability and the tension that companies have? Like, I'll talk to clients and we'll talk them into like one of these vertical, horizontal, we call it a content create experience.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And they're surprised at the end how easy it was to just sit down and say, "Hey, Tim, tell me about your business."
Right.
And then 5 minutes into it, they forget that the cameras and the lights are there. And they're like, and sometimes you can't get them to be quiet.
Right.
We'll have 12 interviews scheduled and 2 hours into it, they're just going.
Right.
Right. They're heading north. And what have you seen and how do you navigate that tension of like super produced for B2B and as opposed to just completely authentic, which I love it when some people say, well, why can't I just have one of our interns shoot that on their phone? Right. Which that's way too organic and candid.
Yeah. It's, I've said for years, you have a greater chance of robbing a bank with a camera and a microphone than you do with a firearm because you want to make people freeze and put a camera and a microphone on them. I've seen people who are so poignant and well-spoken, and they could be in the automotive industry, in the grocery industry, and they could talk to you just as you and I are talking now from their heart, and you put the camera on them, and it was like, okay, your name, let's get your name out of the way, and they
breathe.
Right, and they just can't do it. So a lot of times, I'll talk a little bit about our B2C side. There's a process with that. When people say, we don't need hair and makeup. Hair and makeup should be classified as therapy because when they feel like they look good, sure, if they're concerned about a certain part, whether it could be maybe their skin is shiny or maybe their hair, how they look on camera. And when you start bringing those inhibitions down a little bit, then you start to get people in a natural capacity. I could tell you, we shot some video, and it was kind of a dirty that we did. We shot some video for a startup, and they were very technical driven. They wanted to know what we were doing, what we're saying. So we said, listen, we're just going to ask a couple questions. We shot the video when they didn't know we were shooting the video. It was rolling. We asked them the questions. And as soon as we said the cameras are rolling, we couldn't get 3 or 4 words out of them. They were so concerned about being technically correct, as opposed to just letting their, speaking from the heart and the knowledge that they know they have about their product. And that's, to me, there's got to be a connection, right? That's why I say there's different videos. There's the explainer video that people want the specs and the details of how that works, or a product demonstration. But when you're talking about your brand or, a virtual tour, people want to see you and they want to get a feel for the type of environment that you're in. But that's not natural for some people.
Sure.
And so a lot of times when we tell folks is like, okay, listen, we're going to give you a script. We want you to read the script. So we'll have them on camera, read the script. And then after and this would be my advice if you were, this is a DIYer. If somebody says, I'm going to have my intern pull up their iPhone and they're going to record me, script it, write it, read it, go through it, and then find out what are the parts in that video that you have the emotional attachment to.
Sure.
then, so if you have a 90-second video, put the script down and deliver that line looking on camera. And so there's a passion, there's a connection, because all the rest is going to be B-roll or cutaways or something else. So if you can deliver, in a 90-second video, if you can deliver maybe 15 seconds of poignant, impactful, looking at the camera, like, I'm the guy, I'm the one you want to be able to do, then you're okay.
Yes.
So when you kind of give them those little tips, I guess, and then they start creating it, and then they want to increase the production value and everything else. But back to the B2C side, everybody's there is a value to that, because chances are your video is going to be watched on a 55-inch flat HD flat screen, 9K, 10K, whatever they are up to now. And then, man, if you have a coffee cup in the back, or if you're at a grocery store and there's a hole in the shelf, meaning the 30 bags of chips, there's only 28 bags of chips, and some people notice that you have a client paying you big money. They're paying big money to air that. And the focus is on not what the message should be. The focus is on the stuff in the background. So again, we always tell people, what is the focus of this? Find a clean place, find a good background, find something. Don't do it because it's just distracting. Even if that's what you're selling, it's distracting. So remove the distractions, and what is the message? That's always our guidance and advice. Yeah.
So Tim, we were talking a little bit about the intern with the iPhone and that type of thing. If you were going to give a company some tips of how to get started in video, because we run into something you said before. Someone will call us and say, hey, we want to do video. And my first question is, okay, interesting. What are your goals? Not what video do you want? What are your goals? Because they say the word video, and that's like describing a universe.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things. Oh, do you want something for top of the funnel to attract? Is this for investor relations? What is the purpose? Where's it going to be delivered? How is it going to be communicated? So with that being said, when someone is thinking about video, or let's say one of our listeners is a marketing manager and their company says, okay, we need to get into video. If you were going to give a quick elevator outline of how to get started or the way to approach it, what would you say to that person?
So this is probably going to make a lot of groans for our listening audience. But the first thing is start with a budget, because I can make a $5,000 video. I can make a $500,000 video. And a lot of times when people come to us, if we don't have any financial parameters around it, it's not like that we're going to suggest stuff for the sake of suggesting it. But our minds are racing like, oh, this would be cool. That would be cool. Well, it's only cool if you have 50 grand.
Yes.
If you got 15 grand and say, listen, we want to make a thing. We want to make as many videos as we can. Or we want to do what we can. We have $15,000 budget for this. And our response may be, good luck to you. Here's 4 names. Go ahead, give them a call. These guys do great work for 15 grand.
Sure.
And if somebody comes and says, well, no, I just need to get, aerial footage, whatever else, then that's when our thing comes in. All right, you have $15,000 to spend. You have budget for this. Then we kind of redirect it back and say, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish from this? Is this going to be part of one video? Is it going to be part of a strategy? It's going to be part of a strategy if it works well. Well, let's define work well, and so it always boils back around to the strategy, the approach from a marketing perspective. But you got to have a number, and there's no right or wrong number. It's a number, somebody can come to me. I always said that and say, Tim, this is the greatest car in the world. It's $2,250 a month. I was like, it could be whatever it want to be. I'm not spending $2,250 a month on a car payment, so it doesn't matter. And somebody could say, Tim, it could be the greatest video in the world, but we're not going to spend 10 grand, 15 grand, 20, 50, 100, whatever that number may be. But exponentially, and this is a number nobody's going to hold me to, but I'm going to put it out there. But it's probably 50% of a decrease of the cost of a video the more you do. So let's just say one video costs you 20 grand, 2 videos may cost you 24 grand, 3 videos may cost you 25 grand. The number, and you're like, why? Well, because if we know that going up front, the analogy I always use, if you're building a house and you build the house and the house is done, and then somebody comes up to you and they say, oh boy, I think I want to put a swimming pool in the back. And then the first thing you would say, had I known that when I was building the house, I would have prepared for you to have that. It doesn't mean it was probably only going to cost you a couple grand more to get ready for that swimming pool. Sure, the swimming pool is going to cost you a whole heck of a lot of money, but it's not going to cost you nearly as much. It's going to cost you more now than it did had you told me that. So for us, it's always about asking, what do you want to do with this? What are you going to do? And what are your future plans for it?
Yes.
I know it sounds salesy sometimes and shticky, like, yeah, he's just trying to get more, but it's really truly in their benefit. As a business owner myself, as you are as well, I would be mad at me for not telling me that if I did something, if I went to a restaurant and I sat down and I had 15 people there and he says, if you had 16, it would have been half the cost. I was like, well, why didn't you tell me that? Why didn't you tell me that? So I always err on the side of, just so you know, making one video is not really in your best interest. Let's talk about this. And then here's why. So you're going to spend 15 grand on one video where you can maybe get 2 or 3 for 20, so.
I think that's what marketers have brought to video production, because it seems to me whenever I had video quoted before we did video 10, 15 years ago, you'd hear, oh, I need 15 grand for 1 3-minute video from a pure video, like a videographer who also edited.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
You and I don't think like that.
No.
We're thinking about how can we capture once, produce multiples in a series, or however the outputs vertically and horizontally, like you talked about, are. And then not only that, how do we distribute and activate that content consistently through social channels, on YouTube, in the other platforms? So I think that's something that what may have been missing in video production and execution before, but now our profession is bringing efficiency to that. And it's, the market is demanding it, because if you want to, and not that we do a lot like with like influencers, we don't produce work for influencers, but those folks, I mean, they're turning it over all the time. So that's a whole other realm that is, I don't think you or I, either of us, deal in that. So we won't talk about it, but yeah, I think that's interesting the way that's changed. And it also seems to me that budgets are loosening up for this because people are seeing the value.
Correct.
And even if their organization hasn't seen the value historically, they can look to a competitor or an industry leader who has done it. Whether they've done it well or not, that's a different situation, but they've at least tried. And to me, the barriers to entry to having a really successful video program have never been more available to companies if they just engage and set a little bit of money aside.
Correct.
And when you compare the money that our organizations would need to execute something really, really amazing and successful, and you say, oh, wow, that's a lot of money. Well, how much does the trade show cost? Correct. And as soon as it's over, it's done.
Right.
How much does a new salesperson cost? And this is something I think that a lot of business owners don't really look at is, you hire a new salesperson, how much they cost them per diem, and then you train them for a year or two. They go out and they build that book. By year 3, you're hoping they're bringing a return. And in this market, they probably don't stay for year 3 and 4.
Right.
That gets into the hundreds, if not $500,000. I mean, you can spend a lot of money in that scenario I just described. And I think for you and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if a company invests $100,000 over the course of 6 months, 12 months, our organizations can do a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, we can not only do some attraction, we can do some sales enablement. We can tell the entire story for that company with a couple of shoots and a couple of those vertical and horizontal things. And that's just something I know you believe in. I certainly believe in it. And it's good to have separate voices, because I preach this to my team all the time, and I think some of the time they're like, Bill, you're crazy. But then I met somebody else who's as crazy as me. So two are gathered and talking about it, so it must be true.
Exactly.
But I talk to other colleagues in the industry, and we're seeing this trend. And I think it can't be undervalued, and we need to keep talking about it. We need to be that evangelist of this idea and get it out there.
Yeah, and I'm the last guy, especially from a sales perspective, to try to put a sales guy out of work. However, as budgets and bottom lines get tighter, somebody's looking, I would rather say, could you use those resources, these resources for something else? Because your video on your website doesn't ask for a day off. It doesn't ask for sick leave. It doesn't, it's not causing any HR issues. There's a lot of value to having that video kind of tell your story. And then And what I like about them is, we all have our sales shtick that we kind of go through. But when you have a good video that helps complement and says the things that maybe I don't naturally think of, it makes, to me, a good sales guy better. And
Yes.
it fills the holes. If, like I said, if this guy struggles with price, then let's put the price, let's get it out in front of it, and let's have it there. Don't give him the option of cutting it or doing it.
Sure.
And then if this guy struggles with technical acumen, then let's make sure all the technical parts of this. He's great at building relationships and he's great at pushing the product through, but he doesn't cover this part. So let's cover those things. So again, vertically, you have a video of Tim, and then horizontally you have all the technical parts. So Tim says he can use those pieces for when he's out trying to sell, or you can push it in front of it. It's that passive sell.
Yes.
I just send you the email. Hey, Bill, take a look at this.
Yes.
I know I don't have the time to sit here and spend 4.5 minutes with you because I want to do this to 30 people. And then when you look at it and you tend to you receive the content when you're ready to receive it.
Oh my, yes.
And
Yes.
if I catch you, so that's the purpose of the video. If I'm talking to you and then you're like, all right, I got to get home to get, Mary Jane to soccer, and I got to do this. I could be giving you the best pitch in the world. But when she's at soccer and you're like, okay, it's a, 8-year-old soccer game, I'm going to look at this video.
Sure.
And then I'm going to engage. You're more receptive to engage because you're ready to receive that video. One thing you said before that I think what has changed in our thing that we said about how we as marketers and even B2C people approach the B2B process, I always use this analogy too. I said, I feel like, we're a lumber yard, and then, coming from your word, before it was, hey, here's a 2x4, you cut it, you do it. And then all the scraps just got pushed over in a pile. Well, now these scraps,
man.
Yeah, it's the sawdust.
Yeah.
It was like, here's the sawdust, here's a scrap. Here you put what can you do with sawdust? You can shove it in a bag. You can throw it down if there's a spill. There's all these other uses for it. So, and when you think of that, now all of a sudden you're a little bit, if I told you to build me something and you just start cutting and doing it and throwing the stuff over there, if I told you to build me something, but I want usefulness out of the stuff that you're not going to use, you're a little bit more thoughtful about it. And all of a sudden you're sitting there saying, all right, I'm building a deck for a guy. Does it have to be 18 feet? Could it be 7 inches? Sure. If it's 17 feet, 7 inches, I can use this piece here and I can use something else.
Yes.
So and again, the challenge that we all have and is working with our creatives, because the last thing you want to do is clip your creatives' wings.
Sure.
Because that's what makes them so good at what they do.
Yes.
Because they aren't bound by, limits and restrictions and keeping all the things that maybe a marketer might have to do and staying within the brand.
Yes.
So you don't want to cut your creatives, but when you give your creatives those suggestions of like, how can we make that? It's even more of a challenge for them. So yeah. So I just, I don't know. I dig the whole process of it.
It's good. And I think when we look at, so we're not here really to talk about delivery.
Right.
Right. So, but when we talk about production and we talk about having that list of assets, that inventory of videos, and I think something you said, we're not here to replace salespeople or displace them. The reality is today, there are so few industrial salespeople. I mean, every client we have continually is after more salespeople. So it's not a either or. It's a we can't find, and we've got to do something different so that the market can be prepared so whoever's left can close and not prospect. They can close and not educate. And I think when we look at that model and we look at how it's changed so dramatically, you and I are old enough to remember the rep groups.
Yeah.
And that construct, which I don't even know if those exist anymore.
Yeah, I don't know either. Right.
But we don't run into them like we used to. But if we can offer video that will get that process started and take it the whole way, and then let our salespeople leverage that information. Yep. The other thing I love about it is if you hire a new salesperson, let's say you have to bring somebody on, they don't have to wait for the training.
Correct.
They sat there and saw that video, and you can point to 8 minutes and 42 seconds, right?
Yeah.
And not that from a liability standpoint per se, but just from process and all those things. I ask our team, because I know that they're rabid fans of the Missing Half podcast and everything I say, and they're just waiting every week for my next episode to drop, like our team. But I ask them to watch it because I talk about the things that are consistent with the brand promise and what we're trying to learn at 50 Marketing and trying to deliver for our clients. So that creates some continuity.
Right.
And then I'm not going to talk about this in a Zoom call with them because I'm like, just watch the episode. Right. Tim and I had a great dialogue.
Exactly.
We covered it soup to nuts. Nothing was left unturned. I don't have to do this again.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of value there. So one of the other things, and I get stuck on this, and I think it's a mistake, and I've tried to correct it, and maybe what's missing in my approach. I'll talk about that $100,000 plan to like take the whole thing. And sometimes we need to solve smaller problems for marketing managers and for corporate teams because they won't believe it till they see it for their brand. Mm-hmm. So maybe talk about, okay, if someone wants to get started and budgets or investment levels that they can kind of tiptoe into, okay, let's start with that $5,000. And I'm not putting words in your mouth, but whatever that low number is, let's do a little project. And yes, it might not be as efficient as if we had the whole strategy, but let's walk into it and not that you're quoting a number because this is just napkin math.
Yep.
But when you're thinking about starting something so someone can get a taste, deliver and show their corporate group, hey, this is what success could be if we bought into this bigger strategy.
Yeah. And there's the balance of like DIYing it, and then giving them, but then also the strategy. Like that's where a lot of times we see folks struggling with is really wanting to invest in the strategy.
Okay.
And so if the budget is cost prohibitive for us, that it's just like, listen, we could do something for that, but I don't know what it's going to do for you, Sure. So then we'll take a step back and say, listen, if you got $5,000, here's a couple ideas. I mean, I'll redirect them to this podcast and say, you guys right, go listen to it. And then to get where you're going. But the struggle there is sometimes if you're trying to sell something up the ladder, and then you're going to show them something, they're going to say, well, do me more of that. Well, number one, it's probably not the best time use for the marketing manager.
Sure.
So a lot of times is we want to help them. Let's develop the strategy and then say, listen, here's how we can do. If we really invested in to shoot this video and get this video and get it in the can, then every month we can go back and maybe edit 1 or 2. And then if we shot every 8 months, then all of a sudden you're about 18 months in, you have a nice arsenal.
Yes.
And then if you're thoughtful enough and you don't, spring upon us, oh, by the way, we're changing our name and our logo and a color scheme, we're like, well, that would have been nice to know. We wouldn't have done,
Sure.
So if they're very forthright and then you're knowing that content, if your product is new and the content is probably not going to change, so you now have it and say, well, I need to freshen up the front end or the back. We call them donuts, we call bumpers,
Sure.
whatever you want. That it's like you have something that's opening up to getting their attention. Maybe that has changed. The messaging in the middle is very consistent, and then you push them out at the end. And like I said, that's bringing the B2C approach to a B2B.
Yes,
it's because it's cost effective. You talk about your automotive dealers, your furniture, and I know some of the B2C people are like, what does that have to do with me? Believe me, the volume that they do, you look at your personal injury attorneys, all the other ones, there's a lot to be learned from the B2C side to the B2B side to the B2C because of the volume they do. You look at their efficiencies. And then when you see that, when we do some of these people to say, we're going to make 30 some commercials in 3 days. And they are ready. And because they know what it costs to shoot 30 commercials.
Sure.
And then we're good for 14 months,
Yes.
16 months, 18 months. And if we were to shoot every other month or something like that, it would have been twice the cost.
Sure.
And for us, yeah, I'm happy to do that. If they want to give me that kind of money,
Yes.
I'm not going to turn them no. But again, I'd be mad if I were them working for me. I'd be mad that why didn't you tell me I should just do this all at once? So, a question I actually have for you,
Sure.
if you don't mind. So one thing that we always that has changed because guys like us are driving it as marketers and media people. Before the days people would say, I'm going to make this video. You even said it before, and we'll just cut that down.
Yep.
So the challenge that we put to people is say, I refer to it as edit up.
Okay.
And then, so a lot of times people will say, all right, I want to make this 30. And then they tell us, well, let's cut that to a 10. And then can you make me a 5? And I'm like, how about we start with the 5 and the 10.
Okay.
And then it's easier to match that message as opposed to, because a lot of times if you have somebody who delivers a good song, if there's a solid line that they love and it's a line that they want to end with and it's 7 seconds, what are you going to do with a 7 second? So now you got to extend it to 10. But if you could say, hey, can you deliver that in 5 seconds? Can you give me that line? Or let's rewrite that line so that I can have that as a 5. So now all of a sudden as a media placement guy, you're like, oh my gosh, I got a 5. I got a 5. Yeah. And if somebody says, hey, that's a really solid message, that's 8 seconds, let it breathe a little bit, deliver a little bit more impactful. So now you have a 5 and you have a 10. Now you have a 15 but you have a strong solid 5. You have a strong solid 10. Now you have a 30. Now you're just plugging and playing it and putting it there. And then if you're like, well, I need to put something on the back end of it, sure, you're only changing that part. So we always, when we start writing copy and we started working with folks, we always try to say, what's our single 5 second message, and then is there one? If there's not, then we'll say, all right, then we got to live within a 10.
Sure.
So we always, and again, that's to the folks sitting back at home saying, how can I do this? That's from a marketing perspective as well as just an overall video perspective, the approach to it.
So I think the way we look at that is it used to be that you would have these candid conversations or extract this content, and then you would try to find the hook. Right. You would try to find the thumbnail. Where we've matured as an industry, and I think what's driving it is finally coming down to the B2B, right? This is prevalent, Mr. Beast, those people, they think about that first. Right. And then, like you said, they, how did you say you go vertical it up?
Go edit up.
Edit up.
Right. Yeah. So, right.
And that concept and that label is that now we need to start with the hook.
Right.
We need, and then we go vertical from there.
Yeah.
So I think what's driving that in B2B is the fact that they're starting to mirror the D2C in the social media channels. Mm-hmm. I've had more executives challenge us with, hey, we're ready to take our social media and be way more creative. I mean, sometimes our teams come to us and they're like, hey, we got this great idea. I'm like, yeah, don't ever pitch that.
Right. Yeah.
Like, no. We're not doing TikTok for this.
Right.
But everyone's becoming more accepting of that. So I think this idea of editing up is right on and where we're going to see the industry go. And I think that'll also make us more efficient when we do these vertical and horizontal shoots, because we will be able to shoot every 6 months, every 12 months, whatever, get a ton and then fill that calendar.
Right.
But I think this goes back to, and I love the way you answered that question. I was hoping you would say it. Whenever we look at the clients that are going to be successful in this space and they say, oh, let's try something for $5,000. If I was going to try something for $5,000, I wouldn't pick up a camera. I would just spend it on strategy.
Yes.
Because the reality is to come up with that proper framing of the video strategy to make sure we're capturing the brand and then executing that long-term strategy. Because let's be honest, if you just want a $5,000 video, you're not in the video game.
Right.
You should probably just save your money and do something else. Pick a different channel.
Correct. Yeah.
And leverage that. But if you're willing to invest in it consistently and have these shoots where you can capture a lot of content and then edit up, edit down, edit left and right, all the different directions, then you can really distribute a lot of content. We're doing studies now where we're looking at competitors of our clients, looking at all their videos, what's viral, trying to figure out that magic sauce, because we all want to play the algorithm. We all want to get that free from the distribution. So I certainly think there's a lot to be done there. But that happens not with a camera. That happens in copy.
Right.
That's script writing, copywriting, whatever you're, the person you have working on that, your strategist, pulling that together. And if you don't have a good copywriter who can, write it really quickly, in the short, and I would say you better envision that thumbnail.
Yeah.
Because Mr. Beast will spend 10 times the time on the thumbnail and the hook that he does on producing the video.
Right.
He has shown us the way. This isn't like, we don't have to go on a journey of discovery.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
So, no, I think that's absolutely the correct approach as we move forward. And I think the other thing we have to look at is in B2B and manufacturing, we want this long form. We want to tell the whole story. Well, guess what? Nobody cares.
Right.
Everybody wants their little snippet, like you said, when they want it, that they can just they can go and access it whenever they want it and absorb it. And, maybe it's at the soccer game, or maybe it's they saw that from you. It was sent to them And then 6 months from now, the CEO or whoever makes them move,
right,
says, hey, by the way, we were talking about this. This is now a priority for me.
right.
Oh, hold on a second.
Right.
Give me a couple minutes.
Exactly.
And then let me send this to you. I've been on this. I've been researching.
Right, exactly.
Because the other thing I tell my team all the time, I tell our client success team, you have many jobs, but one of them is to get your marketing manager promoted and get them a raise. Yeah. If you do that, you never have to worry about like the renewals, right? Yeah. Because if you make them look good, then you're solid. So if we're able to provide them with that knowledge and they understand it as well, and we can educate them, I think that's valuable as well. I love that idea of editing up. Did I get it right this time? Okay, fourth time. I'm not real smart,
but
right.
We got
I listen and I come back around. I like that framing of it, and I think that's very valuable to think of it that way. But yes, when we look at it, we have to make sure that we're capturing those micro moments, right? And we're really able to get that copy done. And I think when we look at a budget, if you only have a small amount to spend, strategy, get that strategy in place. And like you said, generally we can find tremendous savings by having a long-term plan, as opposed to knee-jerk, oh, we've got $5,000 this month, let's spend it on this. And then
next month we'll shoot another video, we'll do something else, we want to catch that. And you think it through, right? It definitely makes a lot more, I mean, your resources of the people. I mean, I could check 50 things of why it makes more sense. And the biggest one being the economics of it.
Yes.
So
another thing I'd like to ask you about, and we have some experience in this, I just want to get your take, is there are a lot of companies that are based here in Pittsburgh, in our region, in our territories, as it were, that have locations all across the country. And I think some of them feel that they can't work with an agency locally here that can develop a comprehensive strategy that can handle their entire geography. Oh, let's let the office in Portland deal with their situation. Let's let the branch in Dallas deal with their situation. Have you been able to combat that and come up with a way that you can service those clients and cover their entire geography with traveling crews and that type of thing, and making sure that you're able to be their single source provider for video?
I would think that you talked to my team before this and set me up for this, because we were just in South Carolina, we were in London, we were in Sweden, we were planning to go to Mexico, but we didn't. But we organized a crew, So 100%. Remember, I'm just speaking for us. We're not a vendor. We're not somebody doing it. We're part of the team.
Yes.
And then when you say we need to shoot video in DC or somewhere else, then we'll say, well, okay, well, if we go do it, and it's going to travel, you're going to do this, you got fees, you got to pay all this kind of stuff, it's going to be this. If we hire somebody there who we trust and we know based on our speak to their speak, see their work, and say, here's what they're going to do, we send one guy to kind of quality control, to be able to check it out and to be able to do it. We take the footage. The magic is it. I mean, the shooting is obviously a big part of it, but the magic is in the editing.
Yes.
You can keep the stuff and the brand, keep the consistency of the brand to be able to do it. But we do it all the time, because 20 or 30 years ago, when somebody couldn't look up your location in another place, now that they can, it's one location.
Sure.
It's one brand with multiple locations.
Yes.
Before it was, multiple brands and locations, whatever the inconsistency of it that may have existed. Now you can control that.
Yes.
And so we do, I would say probably 40% of our video has tentacles well outside of the tri-state area. So, which is kind of fun. You get to see some cool places, and there's also a different approach sometimes. How we did a really cool video for CMU that was talking about, this was years ago, but was talking about organ donation.
Oh, sure.
And it was, certain ethnicities and religious backgrounds had different approaches to it and all kind of stuff. I won't get into the details of it, but it was pretty cool. But then we learned, like, well, you know what? If you're going out in Vegas and we're going to run this in Vegas versus running here in Western Pennsylvania versus Jersey, same three denominations, ethnicities, whatever it was, but by their geographic area where it was going to be playing, completely different approach.
Sure.
So it was like, I mean, not that there are certain things that may seem fairly obvious to the people listening to this, but for you get so ingrained into it, and you're like, I guess that does make sense. And somebody, out in Vegas is going to have a different approach to this than somebody here because of their, exposures and whatever else they have. So, so you could even see, even though you're being asked to do the same thing 3 times, it's still from a marketing perspective and a brand perspective, a different approach.
Absolutely. And, we've seen some of that same geographic distribution we've been able to achieve across the United States, a little bit in Europe. And we've found that whether you're sending that producer level person to make sure the QC is done, or if you're sending your whole team, a lot of the economics aren't that much different because quality teams cost what quality teams cost.
Right.
And then they have more overhead to cover that they need a greater margin because they're available.
Yep.
Right. So, but that's interesting. And I'm glad you said that. But I think that's something we need to do a better job of communicating to this local market because we can go places, right? And we can execute. And then the other thing I like about that is not only sending teams, but then we have the ability to capture like Zoom-like recordings with Riverside and stuff like that. So we can polish off or patch up if we need to get some extra SME, subject matter expert film from their chief engineer or whatever and lace it in. So, but you have to be part of the strategy. You have to have that plan and be able to really leverage those things to be that efficient and effective for the client.
Yep.
So, no, interesting. Well, Tim, this has just been a fascinating conversation.
I'm digging it.
Yeah. This has been great. And I think video is in its infancy, really.
Still,
because there's so few companies that are doing it the right way, that they're actually activating their market. So it'll be interesting to see how we're able to both conquer this market and really do well to help these folks, these marketing managers, these executives move this forward.
Yeah. Excited to chat more, and hopefully, some folks hear this, take some nuggets away.
Yes.
And, and if at any point in time they can get a hold of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And please take a moment for a shameless plug. We're all about shameless plugs. Plug.
Well, there's no shameless here. I am completely comfortable with it. So we are Blink. We're a full service marketing agency. We have offices here in Pittsburgh and up in Central PA, up in Bellefonte. Full crew, video production, branding, marketing, everything and anything that you need done. And if you can't, we do have, we're very strategic and nimble. We talk about our core values of being bold, leadership, integrity, and nimbleness, and the nimbleness of it. And then we're kind. We like to think, be kind. You can be nice to people while you're doing work. But the nimbleness of it is, we invest where we know that we have the request and the volume to do it.
Yes.
But where we don't, we have strategic partnerships. Like if somebody came to us and said, like this, it was like, I'm going to call my man Bill because he does that better than us. And, that's what people want. They just want solutions. They don't care. They really don't care who does it.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So,
and they want partners because then if you're referring us or we're referring you,
absolutely,
then that takes a lot of the guesswork out.
You've done what they want to do is vetted it out.
That's right.
That's what we do too.
Yes.
Because we unfortunately have vetted some out and they don't work out and say not again, so.
When there's a lot of challenges, I think, in the agency space, there's so many folks who think they can start an agency and they can do some things for some folks, and God bless them and good for them. But it's a very challenging business to execute at the level that Blink is executing at. And I've been a fan of your work for a long time, and you certainly have a nice run of logos. You've got some nice trophies on the wall there. So, well, Tim, thanks again for the conversation, and really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you for joining the Missing Half podcast, where we're discovering what's missing in manufacturing and B2B marketing. Please subscribe, like, and share. Have a great day.